My wife was cheating with a younger former colleague and was also pregnant with his child. She even admitted that she no longer wanted our kids. My children found a small bunny a few days ago and took it home. They begged us to keep it, but we couldn't maintain a wild rabbit because we already had other pets. The bunny was big enough to fend for itself, so I gently told my kids that it needed to return home to its family. They were sad but decided to return it. However, I was unable to accompany them due to business commitments, so my wife took the rabbit. I instructed her to release it near the thorn bushes at the end of our land, since that was the safest area. We live in a rural region with many predators, and I didn't want the rabbit to be an easy prey. I returned to work, but shortly after, my children ran into the house, weeping loudly. My wife trailed behind them, attempting to calm them down by saying, "It's not so bad." When I asked what happened, my eldest responded, "Mama made us let the bunny go in the middle of the yard, and a hawk took it." They even recounted the unfortunate rabbit's screams. I was ashamed, then enraged. My wife ignored my advice, so our children got to watch the unfortunate rabbit get carried away by a hawk. She defended herself, stating, "It was just a bunny. The kids will get over it." But I told her it was completely incorrect. I had warned her about predators, and now our children had been scarred by what they had witnessed. Both of our children locked themselves in their rooms and refused to speak to their mother for days. When she attempted, they dubbed her the Bunny K. You can guess what the K represents. I've attempted to mediate, but my children are still angry. And honestly, so am I. My wife is upset with me for not having her back. She stated, "As husband and wife, we're supposed to support each other." That resulted in an altercation in which I repeatedly pointed out that she hasn't got my back either. She burst into tears and walked off to our room to pout. Now I'm worried if I messed up. A friend advised me to ask here, so, Ada? Edit 1. Yes, I understand that hawks need to eat, and they may be seen all throughout our area. I just didn't want my kids to see anything like that. They're only 4 and 5 years old. My wife was a city girl, whereas I grew up in the countryside. When I was a youngster, if we had to release a wild animal, we always attempted to find a safe place where it could fight for its survival. Edit 2. I did not yell at my wife. Where in my post does it mention that I yelled? Yes, I chastised her, but I never raised my voice, even when we disagreed afterward. We whispered so that the children would not hear us. Also, I couldn't accompany them to release the bunny because I was working. I work from home part of the week, but I have to keep my phone close by at all times unless I'm on a lunch break. Another thing, I've never used the Bunny K nickname for my wife. That's what our children call her. I've tried to make them stop. I will not call my wife anything derogatory. I'd behave like a bully. Edit 3. We apologize for all of the adjustments, however several individuals misread the situation. My children weren't playing unsupervised when they discovered the bunny. My wife, a stay-at-home mom, was with them when they discovered it. They came running into the house with the rabbit, and I was the one who informed them it had to be released. Edit 4. I can't believe I need to make another edit, but people keep making stupid assumptions. No, this is not a copy of a viral online video. I have not seen the video, but I have no doubt it exists. Hawks frequently hunt small animals. Is it truly shocking that this happened to someone other than the folks who documented a similar situation? In addition, my property is virtually totally flat grassland, with the exception of the home and one tree. I own 4 acres. The lawn was mowed last Sunday, so it was fairly short. That unfortunate rabbit might as well have had a target on its back. Hawks routinely circle our area. I've been battling hawks since I was a child, protecting tiny chicks with my old pellet pistol. Little bunnies are probably one of their favorite things to grab. That is exactly why I instructed my wife to release the bunny into the bushes. Edit 5. I'm so sick and tired of folks saying, "Hawks gotta eat too." Circle of life, or calling me UDA, for allegedly rejecting nature. When I was a kid, I had to keep animals safe from hawks for my grandparents. Farmers also have the right to safeguard their animals against predators. We weren't going to let the hawks swoop in and grab all the newborn chicks they wanted, as they would have done every day. Yes, I was out there with a pellet gun, but it was mostly a deterrent. I never did shoot one down. Oh, I hit a few, but only barely. All it did was cause them to turn tail and fly away. And for the record, I haven't shot a hawk in 25 years. I have never enjoyed shooting anything alive. My grandfather was the one out there with real guns, taking down hawks and coyotes. But I grew up watching hawks take little creatures. Hawks had little trouble getting food in this location. However, like other predators, they are opportunistic. That is exactly why I instructed my wife to release the bunny into the bushes. But, as I stated in a previous edit, I was unable to leave my desk, a fact that many people still do not seem to understand or did not bother to read. What happened to that poor bunny is nothing compared to what I have to tell you now. I am not sure if this is the appropriate place to post, but I can't think of anywhere else. For those who remember me, I'm the guy whose wife forced our kids to release a wild bunny in the middle of the yard, despite my instructions to move it to the bushes for safety. A hawk swooped in and took the bunny directly in front of our two young children, who were 4 and 5 years old at the time. They freaked out at their mother and ran back to me in tears. After that, our children began calling her the bunny slaughterer. After her affair was revealed, others began calling her by that moniker, making it seem even more fitting. What happened to the unfortunate bunny? That's ancient history compared to what I have to say now. I'm chatting to you as a free man after completing my divorce a few months ago. This will be long and confusing, so buckle up. Edit, AP stands for affair partner. I apologize for not making that apparent sooner. I showed my wife the original Reddit post, and she was outraged. So upset, in fact, that it sparked a major fight, and then she gave me the silent treatment for a week. Following the rabbit incident, I tried to get my kids to stop mistreating their mother by disciplining them with little groundings and timeouts. But the term came back every time our kids were furious with her. After a few weeks, my wife finally gave up the cold shoulder and said she should have listened to me regarding the bunny. She stated she should have carried it to the bushes, as I had recommended. But she later stated she just defended herself because she didn't want to be wrong. I accepted her apology and even apologized for creating the Reddit post. I wanted to go to marriage counseling, but she refused. She acted as if nothing was amiss with our marriage, and I chose not to press the subject further because things appeared to be improving. But after a few weeks, my eldest approached me and said she needed to tell me something. She was angry with her mother for another reason. And she was afraid to tell me. What she said shocked me to the core. I consoled her and said she could tell me anything. Well, what she said stunned me and altered everything in an instant. She explained that Mama had been bringing a man over on Saturdays while I was at work for months. She called him her special friend. She bribed our children to stay quiet about it, but my eldest sensed something was wrong and worked up the confidence to tell me. Children understand stuff. They pick up on things rapidly. I absolutely despise it when people ignore that reality. I'd observed my wife acting differently recently. She had been short with everyone, particularly the children. I tried to talk to her about it after showing her my first Reddit post, but she exploded over anything she could think of. She criticized my beauty, behavior, habits, and even my family. She also said that I used to smoke, although I quit more than 10 years ago. She then resorted to locking me out of our bedroom and crying so loudly that the entire house could hear it. So when my eldest approached me and dropped that bombshell, I quickly put 2 and 2 together. She was cheating, and her conduct mirrored the mood swings she had while pregnant with both of our children. Similar but worse. According to what I've read online and what friends and even a counselor have told me, my wife was cranky due to hormones and projecting as a result of her adultery. I'm not an expert in psychology, but it makes sense. I wanted to believe it was simply a misunderstanding, but my instinct warned me otherwise. So I did what I needed to do. I swiftly ordered and installed covert cameras, without informing anyone. To keep it a mystery, I had them brought to my employment, so no one at home would notice. I set them up on a night when my wife went out for a girls' night. It was simpler than I expected. Within a few hours, I had them all connected to Wi-Fi and could monitor the entire house from my home PC, laptop, and work computer. At first, I was concerned that I was overreacting. I thought, if I'm wrong, I'll just take them down, and no one will ever know. But no. My worst concerns were confirmed. I gathered a lot of evidence in just the first week. My wife's affair partner, AP, was a former colleague. I remembered him quite well. They were always pleasant at business gatherings, but I never thought much of it. My wife left her work years ago to be a full-time mother after becoming pregnant with our first kid. It was a joint choice at the moment. She maintained contact with her old coworkers, claiming they were her greatest friends, but not anymore. What I'm about to tell you has made her disliked by everyone. Her AP was over a decade younger than her. When she quit her employment, she mentored him to take over her position. They'd stayed quite close. My wife and I are both over 40, although you wouldn't know it by looking at her. She's gorgeous. She is constantly mistaken for someone in her 20s. And I suppose she took full advantage of that. I finally confided in my sister about what was happening. I showed her the nanny cam clip. She informed me she had a long-held suspicion. She had seen my wife at a neighborhood bar, going way too close to a man who wasn't me. They never kissed, but there was plenty of touching. Hand on the shoulder, Lower back. She didn't tell me sooner because she wasn't certain. That is all I needed to hear. I purchased a GPS tracker and placed it in my wife's trunk. My sister and her husband promised to help me. They followed my wife's location during her next girls' night out. She did not go to her customary area. Instead, she traveled 20 miles further, to an entirely different location. There, she met AP. My sister and brother-in-law watched from their car. They recorded as AP continued to stroke my wife's belly while they talked. When I viewed the clip, I knew. She was pregnant with his child. Her mood swings. The secret, everything made sense, I lost it. My sister and brother-in-law had to calm me down since I was extremely distraught. I wanted to bury my sorrows with drink, but my sister persuaded me out of it. She was correct. Drinking was the absolute worst thing I could do. I took a leave of absence from work, but told my wife it was for a business trip. She could not have been more thrilled. She didn't even try to hide her happiness. Who was this woman? She was not the woman I married nearly 2 decades ago. Did someone else take her place? Is she an alien from the pod people? Did I ever really know her? The more I thought about it, the less it made sense. So I quit attempting to make sense of it. Before I left, I ensured that my cameras were rolling. My sister and brother-in-law agreed to take my children for a few days. My wife took the bait. She phoned AP only a few hours after I departed. He showed up that evening, and stayed the night. I'm not going to go into detail about what they did. You can complete the blanks yourself. But what struck me the hardest? They kept joking about me the entire time. They openly discussed their kid and how they wanted to figure out what to do before her tummy began to show, since she was already more than 3 months along at the time. There was no way it could be mistaken for mine. AP is a different race than me, so it would be evident from birth that the kid wasn't mine. My wife dismissed AP's concerns, saying they had months to straighten things out. Then she shamelessly claimed that this wasn't even her first affair, having slept with another man when she was 29 years old. She told AP that she was weary of having to be the good housewife, tired of being around a dull man like me who made her feel old, and that if it hadn't been for my financial security, she would have left me long ago. Even AP inquired about her plans for our children. Her precise words were, "He can have them." She didn't want to be around them any longer because she thought they liked me better, and she'd be having her do-over kid anyhow. I almost flung my laptop across my motel room because I was disgusted. But I controlled myself, drank a few beers from a 6-pack, ate at a diner, and then watched a movie. After that, I spent half the night lying in bed, contemplating, until finally falling asleep. I thought I knew my wife rather well. I loved her. I would have given her everything. But, in the end, some individuals are simply nasty, and you'll never truly know who they are until they expose their actual nature. I made up my mind right then and there, I was going to destroy her through divorce. I am typically a polite and quiet man, but if you push me too far, I may become your worst nightmare. The following day, I went straight to a law company and requested the meanest divorce lawyer they had. I reside in an at-fault state, so once I caught her affair on camera, she was doomed. At first, the lawyer was hesitant that I would hire him so rapidly, but when I told him more about my position and showed him some video footage, he gave me a mischievous grin. We shook hands, and he promised to start right immediately. This was the type of case that divorce lawyers like working on. A few weeks later, when I was working from home and the kids were in school, my wife was served with divorce papers. The sheriff delivered them right into her hands, and my cameras captured it all. She appeared horrified as she opened the envelope, read the contents, and suddenly lost her mind. She stormed into my office, yelling at me, but I remained cool and composed the entire time. I had already checked out of our marriage. She tried to argue, but I simply told her that I had made up my mind and wanted her out of my house. I was the only one who had ever paid into the mortgage. She screamed at me, "You can't do this to me," and even threatened to tell people that I had battered her if I brought her to court. She even threatened to have me fired from my job. I told her to go right ahead. She could make up whatever falsehood she chose. It would not save her. It wasn't like she hadn't already planned to screw me over. She was pregnant with AP's child after all. Her eyes widened. "How much do you know?" she inquired. I simply stared at her and said, "Enough." Then I told her again, I wanted her to leave. She resisted, yelling that the house was as much hers as mine. Then she returned to her bedroom and shut herself within. I watched the bedroom cameras as she had a total tantrum. She then took out her phone and contacted the cops. She was acting panicked, yet she was smiling the entire time. She was quite an actress. If I hadn't previously realized she was a liar, I would have believed her performance over the phone in an instant. I waited for the cops with the front door wide open, welcoming them inside when they arrived. They came in hot and ready for a fight. However, the house was clean. There were no traces of a fight. Then my wife ran out of the bedroom, grabbed one of the officers' vests, and began crying, accusing me of being a monster. I asked one of the officers if I could show them evidence of what was going on, and he said okay. My wife was surprised. She had no idea I had recorded everything. I took out my laptop and showed the officer video footage from my security cameras. First, I aired a video of my wife claiming she would make stuff up to ruin my life. Then I showed them the video of her running from my office into the master bedroom. Finally, I aired a clip from the bedroom camera in which she called the cops and flatly lied. I had captured everything, from different perspectives. Despite her assertion that I hit her, she had no visible injuries. And the cameras throughout the house revealed a very different story than the one she told the cops. I then handed the officers a thumb drive, telling them it held all of the footage they needed to establish she had phoned them under false pretenses. Despite all of this proof, my wife continued to lie. She argued that I was an abuser, even claiming that the recordings were unlawful and inadmissible. I quickly explained that these were entirely legal. They were security cameras within my own home, not in a public place. She turned to the officers and urged them to take action. And they did. She was the one handcuffed. She immediately began crying like a child. I just sat there and shook my head. This was once the woman I adored for many years. I felt she was a wonderful, intelligent, and endearing individual. I could not have been more wrong. As the cops led her away, she cried that they couldn't do this to her. But she didn't fight back because she knew fighting arrest would just increase her charges. Once she was gone, I canceled all of her credit cards, which were in my name. I also canceled all future payments to our joint bank account. She'd have to use her own money to get herself out of jail. And she had a lot saved up. For years, she had worked while I paid the mortgage. She was far from broke. The next day, she returned for her automobile. But I'd already packed several suitcases full of her clothes and personal belongings and left the key on the seat. She couldn't even walk back into the house. Her parents came to speak with me. Her parents approached me the day after she had bailed herself out. They initially only knew the warped version of events she had told them, the same lies she had told the police. Her father was very furious. Despite his age, he was huge and strong, and he appeared ready to assault me. However, I asked him a simple question. Did you know your daughter was having an affair? Did you know she's pregnant? He froze. His shocked expression provided me with an excellent opportunity to explain myself. I got out my laptop again and showed them the recordings. When they realized the reality, they were disgusted. They said they couldn't believe she was their daughter. They apologized and offered to keep in touch to help with my children. Then, right in front of me, they contacted my wife on loudspeaker to confront her with her lies. She initially tried to defend herself, until they informed her that they were standing right next to me and had seen the tapes for themselves. They knew everything? And they wanted her out of their house right away. She tried to backtrack, but they weren't having it. Her parents said to her, "We did not raise you to be a selfish, adulterous liar who would try to frame her own husband." Then they stated something that surprised me. "You are no longer our daughter." They abruptly disowned her over the phone. They ended the call before my wife could say anything else. She called them back several times, but they always ignored her. When my in-laws returned home, not only was my wife gone, but she had destroyed various items in their home. My mother-in-law was in tears due to the devastation. I still consider my ex-in-laws to be family because they see their grandchildren on occasion, but my ex-wife is basically dead to us. A few days later, my wife returned with AP in tow to gather her belongings. AP would not even enter the house, and my wife would not speak to me while she gathered the rest of her possessions. She was aware that cameras were everywhere, and that attempting anything would just lead to a deeper hole. I wasn't alone either. My sister and brother-in-law were present to keep an eye on her. My brother-in-law made sure to keep an eye on AP from the window, just in case. While my wife was still packing, the kids arrived home. She made no attempt to speak to them, even when our youngest cried for her. Before departing, she ripped our wedding photos from the walls and hurled them on the floor, breaking the glass. I believe she desired a reaction from me because she gazed at me while doing so. But I didn't say anything. Seeing that I would not satisfy her, she collected the last of her bags and walked out the door. After she went, I had to contact my elderly mother to remain with me for a bit. I couldn't care for my kids on my own, and I didn't have much childcare help. Furthermore, I couldn't take too much time off work. At the same time, I scheduled DNA tests for my children. I was confident they were mine, but several others cautioned me to be certain. Fortunately, both of my kids are mine. I also was tested for STIs, and happily, I was negative. About a week later, my wife arrived at my door again. She stated she'd agree to a clean divorce if I would too. That meant she'd receive half of everything. If she thought I was stupid enough to consent to it, she was mistaken. I declined in front of her. There was some back and forth, and she basically admitted that she had researched the laws and discovered that they were not on her side. We had met, become engaged, married, and spent our entire lives in this state. There was no way she could escape a significant loss unless I agreed to settle. I refused. I said to her, "You betrayed me, our kids, your parents, and practically everyone by having an affair." Then I slammed the door on her face. She departed softly. I did not see her again until court. Several months later, we were in divorce court. By then, my wife was clearly pregnant, but AP was nowhere to be found. I completely anticipated her lying to the judge, which she did several times. But I had sufficient video proof to disprove any lie she told. She did not stand a chance. When she realized her falsehoods wouldn't work, she tried a fresh strategy: postponing the divorce. She refused to participate, imposed unreasonable conditions, and dragged everything out. She wanted most of my savings, a lengthy list of my own assets. I would buy out her half of the house, despite the fact that she had never paid into it. On my end, I was pushing for full custody of our children and the removal of her name from the house deed. I had clear video evidence that proved she stopped caring for our children. She was eager to fabricate lies to ruin me. She kept procrastinating and changing demands, but the court wouldn't have it. This is an at-fault state, therefore she was entitled to very little, especially as an adultery. And the fact that she attempted to frame me exacerbated her situation. In the end, she lost custody of our children and walked away with only her things, a fair financial settlement considering the circumstances, and the automobile I had previously purchased for her. The title was in my name, but I signed it over without hesitation as part of the settlement. She had made no attempts to communicate with our children throughout the divorce, so I received full custody. The house is now wholly mine, and I am totally free of her. My now ex-wife attempted to continue lying about me to others prior to and after the divorce, but my sister ensured that word spread about my wife's infidelity. Once our mutual friends understood who was telling the truth, they quickly cut her off. She and her AP left town together once their divorce was finalized. I heard that AP was not fired, but rather transferred. To where? I do not know. Honestly, I don't care. They could have sent him and my ex to freeze in Greenland for all I cared. I'm just glad they're both gone. By now, my ex should have had her do-over baby, and I hope it was all worthwhile for her. This is not the type of story I expected to publish on Reddit. I started out by talking about my wife releasing a bunny where a hawk could catch it. However, many of the responses I received back then reminded me that I should have paid attention to the red signals far sooner. I believe I just wore rose-tinted glasses throughout our marriage. But it's over now. Thank you to any readers who made it through this. I understand it was a lot to read, but this is my life. I had my ex's name removed from the house deed because every bank document proved that I was the only person who had ever paid into it. My ex was also constantly arguing with the judge, and in an at-fault state, being a confirmed cheater puts you in a lot of difficulties during a divorce. It's similar to having a signed prenup against you. And when I said I hired the meanest lawyer in the firm, I meant it. The man resembled a bear and a shark mixed together. My ex-wife received a $60,000 settlement, as well as the car I bought for her 2 years earlier for $50,000. I had totally paid off the car and handed the title to her. She was also offered partial custody of our children, but after the court saw the video of her claiming she didn't care about them anymore, she didn't bother fighting for custody. Instead, she gladly gave up all parental rights when she saw she wasn't going to get her way. And if you think the cops wouldn't have arrested her for lying, think again. The cops here don't mess around. My ex attempted to paint me as a wife beater with a psychotic smirk on her face. That is plenty of justification for an arrest. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.